Hello, everyone. Welcome to 2022 ASEAN Summit, and thank you for joining us on SEC201 Data Governance and Protection Strategies in AWS. My name is June, and I'm a Storage Specialist SA Lead in APJ. Today, I'm joined by Naeem, our Senior Storage Specialist SA with AWS, who will introduce himself later in this presentation. Before we go into the details, here's an overview of what we'll be sharing today. First, we'll look at what data is and how you can achieve governance. And we'll look at security and controls which you can implement with AWS and how you can best protect your data from major risk. So first, let's look at what data has become to be today. Data, unlike before, is becoming a core to business success. In fact, every business, including finance, retail, medical, you name it, is a data business nowadays. Whatever product you're offering or selling, a business has to understand and collect better information about your customers, customer experiences, and so much more. Data is an absolutely essential part of making sure that your business is successful. And the data growth of massive proportion is becoming the standard. And as a matter of fact, per IDC report, the growth of enterprise data is expected to grow 3 times by 2025. And of that data, 87% is predicted to be stored in the cloud. The explosion of data is a challenge. It's becoming unrealistic to maintain on-premises for the volume of data, variations of compute, and the dynamic speed to meet the customer need, and the ever-growing cost as well. The nature of the digital economy increases risk because data is shared with users, organizations, and customers. Traditional defense, where unknowns are kept out and knowns let in, is no longer a viable option, having more complex data protection requirements in recent days. At the same time, organizations are transforming IT by shifting from just collecting data to innovating new ways to utilize them. It's an opportunity to advance yourself from the competitions if you can bring your idle data to life and make it work for you. So just now, we talked about the growth of data, which a lot of it is driven by the growth of applications. Applications take 2 passes to the cloud, either built in the cloud or customers move existing applications from on-premise. Born in the cloud organizations fully utilize the scale and agility of the cloud. As you hear from a lot of the customers, success businesses out there, we also see customers build a new applications in the cloud to take the advantage of the rich set of analytics and machine learning. Some customers with huge on-premise presence are moving one application after the another as they modernize their applications and infrastructure. We also see customers commit to being all in and moved mission-critical applications that are crown jewel to their businesses. What's in common for all these customers are they built data architectures to deliver capabilities so their data is always protected. They make their data work for them so that they can make better and faster decisions. They design their data architecture so data is cost optimized as well. And their data is available at the performance, the applications, and the workflow needed. And data is available wherever they need it as well, in the cloud, in the hybrid, or even at the edge. And storage is the foundation of these data architectures. So with that, let's look at data governance. Data governance is a data management concept that enables organizations to ensure high data quality exists and is used securely to support business objectives. And this is done by defining policies and adding controls to manage risk. The amount of data being generated creates a balancing act between access and control. This balancing act occurs with all workload types, whether it's applications, business intelligence, analytics, and even ML. There's a fine line between the ability to use that data and the ability to extract business value out of those data, ensuring that usage is correct and in accordance with organization policies. So what this boils down to is that the trust in data is mutual. For one, it's about businesses being able to trust their data, but also about external parties trusting businesses with their data. To ensure trust is built, data protection and governance are becoming more and more critical every day. When I talk to some customers, oftentimes they acknowledge the importance of data governance, but find it really difficult to implement it properly. Now you need to ask yourself, am I using this data correctly with these applications which I'm building? It is much harder to build out the platform and scaffolding to ensure that data is being used properly. For example, storing data encrypted in a database and using application-level decryptions. Now, this is not natural, and so this is where having secure platform comes in handy. AWS provides you with the means and tools necessary to build a secure platform and scaffolding. A recommended mental model towards governance on AWS is to look at it in tiers, with an emphasis on the hierarchy of control types that can exist in your AWS environments. Now, let's look at security and controls briefly. With governance, where we looked at things in hierarchy, for security, let's look at it in layers. AWS offers a full suite of security features that strengthens your security posture and makes sure that you are securing your data against bad actors, whether they're external or internal to your organizations. We'd like to start with the IAM policy that allows you to grant and restrict access to your users. We also have multi-factor authentication that makes it difficult for someone to gain an access by social engineering or stealing your username and password. Thirdly, we have immutable storage and backups that protect your data against any modification or deletions. We shall cover this in more detail in the later presentation. We also have various encryption schemes offered through key management systems and integration with other AWS services. Now, physical security and digital separation of user roles, for example, to backup access, are also available. Lastly, audit tracking capabilities to track who is accessing what data, as well as compliance reports are available. Along with these AWS inherent capabilities, we also want to remind customers of the shared responsibility model. Further extending the previous concept, organizations can put in place a policy that data of different categories require different keys. You can use AWS services to ensure that PII, for example, personal identifiable information data, is encrypted with the different keys, separate from data fitting other categorizations. This can help further bolster data residency requirements, should you need to. Now, please keep in mind a proactive data security posture with always-on visibility keeps your data perimeter secure and sensitive data compliant. VPCs can be another way to ensure that data can only be accessed by certain parties. The biggest use case for something like this is to help with data residency requirements. VPC peering can also lead to a secure data sharing practices. For example, you can have a RDS database located within a VPC that belongs to a primary organization, but via shared VPC, a partner organization or your customers can also gain access to that database. Now, let's tie it all together via defense in-depth analogy. The first line of defense is focused on the identity access management, which basically forms a trust radius for the customers. For example, providing multi-factor authentication tokens that deny potential attackers from accessing your organizations. The second line of defense is automated monitoring of your security perimeter in case an attacker breaches, be that be your VPC, AWS organizations, or even an account. Our customers tell us they want to monitor resource configurations and know when someone changes a S3 KMS key or when their resource metadata matches patterns and indicators of a ransomware attack. This could also include mechanisms that provide time delays for organizations to react to anomaly activities. Now, the last line of defense focuses on secure backup storage and achieving restore RTOs in cloud and also on premises, which ensures customers deploy a known good data set as soon as possible. Controls such as cross-region and cross-account management protections, active auditing, and alerting against protection policies provide an additional layer of protection for ransomware. This approach can be used to help customers build their own defense in depth and with multiple layers of defense auditing, alerting, and if needed, assured data restorations. Now, I'd like to hand it over to Naeem, our Storage Specialist Solutions Architect, to share how you can best achieve data protection and build a high level of ransomware protection with your data on AWS.
Hi, I'm Naeem Mulche, and in my role, I work with customers, assisting them with their data and storage challenges. A large component of that is data protection. So I'm excited to be able to co-host this session today, which is intended to help you on your journey in understanding more about the various ways you can use AWS storage and data protection services for your needs. Earning customer trust is the foundation of our business at AWS, and we know you trust us to protect your most critical and sensitive assets, your data. We earn this trust by working closely with you to understand your data protection needs and by offering the most comprehensive set of services, tooling, and expertise to help you protect your data. Protecting data is made operationally easier when you use, integrate, and automate with AWS native services. We will prepare security, cloud, and IT professionals to understand the fundamentals about native AWS security and identity services and share best practices for security in the cloud. So, why use AWS data protection? Customers around the globe are using AWS data protection in diverse ways for outcomes such as protecting intellectual property and trade secrets, protecting customer information, automating tasks to save time and reduce risk, assisting with scale as your business grows, and it easily integrates with hundreds of AWS services whilst also inheriting global security and compliance controls. For organizations to manage data in the cloud, they need a secure cloud computing environment with the ability to manage the privacy controls of data, control how their data is used, who has access to it, and how it is encrypted. AWS data protection services such as Key Management Service, Secrets Manager, Certificate Manager, and Cloud HSM are designed to be highly integrated with hundreds of AWS services, with granular controls over access and policy enforcement, and a highly secure foundation. These fully managed services can help reduce operational risk through automation and increase visibility. Additionally, AWS has a large ecosystem of security and consulting partners to help organizations on every stage of their cloud journey. How is cloud-based data protection different than traditional on-premises based solutions? With on-premises environments, you have to go through the various heavy lifting tasks. You have to procure, set up, and manage your storage. You have to budget and prepay for the storage arrays and continue spending on support costs. You don't even have the ability to scale up or down, and most times end up with less than 11 nines of durability. Most CIOs I meet talk about the mundane daily tasks and time that their engineering teams spend on backup and data protection strategies. And finally, the costs. It gets expensive to buy 2 or more appliances for added availability and redundancy with no SLAs. Now compare that with AWS Cloud. Cloud has a pay-as-you-go model, helps move all those CapEx costs to an OpEx model. It comes with endless scaling and offers higher 11 nines of durability. This brings peace of mind to CIOs, and they are able to redeploy their engineering teams towards creating their customer value-added applications. Let's look into the key metrics when it comes to data protection and disaster recovery. The recovery point objective, or RPO, and the recovery time objective, or RTO. Now, how much data could one afford to lose, measured in time? This is called the recovery point objective, or RPO. For example, if a disaster occurs at 12 p.m. midday and the RPO is 1 hour, that means that the system could recover all its data that was in the system before 11 a.m. Financial customers tracking customer transactions want to minimize data loss. They will go for a strategy with the lowest RPO. Then, how quickly you must recover from the disaster. This is called the recovery time objective, or RTO. For example, if a disaster occurs at 12 p.m. midday and the RTO is 4 hours, the DR process should recover data and be fully functional by 4 p.m. Media customers want content up all the time, so they look for the lowest RTO. These objectives shouldn't be set by just the IT team. It is important to involve the business teams while setting these RPO and RTO goals. Now, let's look into the key data protection strategies and the customer journey. Let's now focus on the first phase of your data protection journey, and that being the backup, restore, and archive strategy. Some of the key considerations for backups are minimizing the time to recover when any type of data loss happens, minimizing the amount of data that is lost. Whilst all these strategies need to be done with costs being considered, the overall business risk has to be considered when setting the RPO and RTO SLAs for your data. First, let's look at a traditional backup environment. You have application servers and backup servers, or appliances that manage and catalog the backups for your applications. These backup servers may have SSD-based storage for fast access to your more recent backups. But they also may use other storage media, such as tape storage for longer-term retention, and also disk-based arrays for backups that need faster restores. Some of you also store copies off-site for compliance using third-party data bunker services, requiring physical shipping of that data out to an off-site location. In this scenario, there is simply too much data as your backup data is growing and you need a place to securely store that data and manage it. This process is too vulnerable. Backups need to be secured from modern cyber attacks and unauthorized deletions. The whole mechanism is too fragile. Are they durable, available, and recoverable across sites? And cost is a big factor. It gets very expensive quickly as you try to raise the levels of durability and availability as you manage multiple replicas and provision additional hardware for that. The whole strategy is too complicated. Customers have told us that there is a lot of undifferentiated heavy lifting they have to do to protect and manage their backups. Now, let's look at how you can modernize your backups. This is how customers implement a modern backup hybrid infrastructure using their on-premises environment and AWS. This is the easiest way for our customers to get started with using AWS. Customers often look at migrating backup, restore, and archive data because they can enjoy the advantages of the scalable, durable, low-cost cloud storage with a simple, quick migration. Customers can use the AWS storage gateway that presents a virtual tape library, or a VTL, a file storage target, or as iSCSI volumes using the volume gateway for their on-premises applications to move data to the cloud. On the back end, the gateways use the S3 APIs to move that data over to S3. Customers can also continue using their existing investments in the on-prem infrastructure and use AWS to elastically scale their storage. Practically every enterprise backup software available today integrates directly with S3, making the movement of data very simple. Moving to the cloud enables you to reduce the significant costs in securing, storage, and managing that data in on-premises arrays. One of our customers recently eliminated 30,000 tapes and reduced their monthly disaster recovery expenses by more than 50%. As I mentioned earlier, you have multiple ways to back up with AWS, from on-premises and/or within AWS. Most backup vendors such as Commvault, Veritas, Veeam, Rubrik, and Cohesity integrate either natively with AWS storage services such as S3 or integrate with AWS Backup Service APIs to back up data that is generated within the cloud. Atlassian is a customer using AWS Backup. They are an important customer of ours and they are using AWS as a backup service to automate their backup, restore, and disaster recovery requirements. And they are also bolstering their ransomware recovery strategy. Now that we have covered backup and restore, let's build on those strategies and address the key use case that is top of mind for every CIO or customer today: ransomware recovery. Ransomware threats are rampant. Hackers are finding new ways almost every other day to attack all kinds of institutions: financial, healthcare, industries, and other verticals. This is becoming one of the hottest topics in the IT industry. According to a recent study by Gartner, 75% of IT organizations will face one or more ransomware threats between now and 2025. That is a staggering number. 3 out of 4 companies being hit with ransomware. So, CIOs are now starting to think of a ransomware attack as a question of when and not if. One of the cybersecurity research firms has predicted that globally, businesses in 2021 would fall victim to a ransomware attack every 11 seconds. That is down from 14 seconds in 2019. And it was estimated that the cost of ransomware to businesses would top $20 billion in 2021. Now, let's go through the anatomy of an actual ransomware attack based on what a customer went through recently. First, let's see what happened in the first 12 hours and then the next 3 weeks after the event. An employee was hit by a social engineering attack. They got a fake email that looked genuine. Ended up installing the software update, which looked like a regular software update. The malware gained Windows OS login, Active Directory admin rights. Then the attack started spreading through the network and started destroying the system. Users started to report to IT about issues, IP phones going down, and users lost email access and Windows logins were disabled. At this point, the IT team decides to isolate the environment and they start using personal email and cell phones for communication. Business leaders and the legal team get involved at this point and decide to involve FBI and security consultants, depending on the scale of the attack. Over the next 3 weeks, the IT storage administrator tries to recover from local backups and do restores. This creates a high traffic on the network and high latency was caused to the business on the network and storage resources. Added to this, they then make a tough decision to scrap some of the affected laptops and servers and they order new hardware. Finally, after getting the new hardware, they start the rebuild process. So as you can see, even after 3 weeks after the ransomware attack, they are still slowly limping and not completely back to normal business. This is a painful experience, what we would like for all our customers to avoid. The NIST framework is a set of guidelines and best practices to help organizations build and improve their cybersecurity posture. This cybersecurity framework has 5 pillars: identify, protect, detect, respond, and recovery. In this section, we will dive deeper into the recovery pillar. This is becoming one of the most important areas for customers to have the insurance policy and ability to recover. This helps businesses and public sector organizations to recover quickly whilst minimizing disruption as well as meeting business and regulatory requirements. Key factors to consider for the recovery strategy are: what is the most important data that you want to protect? Should the recovery of some data be prioritized over others? What is an acceptable recovery time? And what trade-offs should be made among budget, time, and data completeness? The key requirements when it comes to a ransomware recovery strategy are the immutability of the critical data. The stored objects should be in a state that cannot be modified by anyone after creation. And for that, we have the S3 object lock feature and the AWS backup vault feature to help us in this regard. The next important characteristic is isolation, physically and logically isolating copies of infrastructure templates, files, and applications required to bring back mission-critical business processes. We have several services such as storage gateways, AWS Direct Connect that helps in this regard. And lastly, the recovery strategy needs a lot of intelligence to scan the data and make sure that it is not being corrupted. We have several machine learning and AI-based architectures to analyze the data and conduct forensics of the data to be absolutely sure that nothing is corrupted. We have several services such as Amazon Guard Duty, Athena, and S3 Storage Lens that could be deployed for intelligence. Let's quickly brief you with a few implementations of ransomware recovery strategies in AWS. The first approach is utilizing the backup and restore capabilities. Customers can either leverage their existing investment in one of AWS's ISV partners in this domain, such as Commvault, Veeam, or Veritas, or they can simply obtain a similar solution off the shelf as long as the third-party solution has the capability to fully integrate from on-premises to S3 Object Lock. S3 Object Lock enables customers to take backup data as write once, read many storage in Amazon S3. That extends data immutability from on-premises infrastructure to the cloud for enabling ransomware recovery and remediation. These are some APN partners that work with AWS services to provide an end-to-end immutable solution for backup data. They have integrated S3 Object Lock APIs within their products so that you can create a write once, read many, or worm model for your backup data, helping you secure your data from accidental and malicious actions. You can also take a look at other storage competency partners we work with using the QR code above. Similarly, for customers with cloud-native workloads, we have a ransomware recovery implementation. Let's say you are running a website on AWS. You have a few ECS instances as web servers, you have block storage in EBS, and you use EFS to serve files to the applications. And let's assume you also have some databases that you have deployed using Aurora. So how do you go about your data protection journey, backup and ransomware recovery? You first get started with AWS Backup Service to create the backup plan. Then you move your critical backup data into a backup vault and manage it securely with the key management service to protect and encrypt the data in the backup vault. You can then use the cross-region, cross-account capabilities of AWS Backup to store isolated copies of your vault data in a different account. This backup vault can be configured with the Backup Vault Lock feature to make those backups immutable. There are also separate credentials that are available between your primary root organization and other organizations. When any ransomware event occurs, you can go back to the golden copy from the backup vault and get it restored. Finally, you could use the compliance reporting capabilities of AWS Backup Audit Manager to stay on top of all the data protection mechanisms. Now that we covered the backup and ransomware recovery strategies of your data protection journey, we shall look at ways for you to develop a disaster recovery plan. This requires you to think about not just storage and data protection, but your business continuity goals and the applications that need to continue running when disaster strikes. When planning for disaster recovery, or DR, plan for these three main categories of disaster: natural disaster, such as earthquakes or floods; technical failures, such as power failure or network connectivity; then human actions, such as inadvertent misconfiguration or unauthorized outside party access or modification. Each of these disasters could affect you locally, regionally, countrywide, or global. Both the nature of the disaster and the geographical impact are important when considering your DR strategy. When selecting your DR strategy, you must weigh the benefits of lower RTO, recovery time objective, and RPO, recovery point objective, versus the costs of implementing and operating a strategy. Backup strategy that is on the left side of this spectrum only protects your data and has a slow recovery. It could take hours or even days to get back all the data and get the business going again. The Pilot Light and Warm Standby strategies in the middle both offer a good balance of benefits and cost. It offers RPO and RTO in the order of minutes, whereas multi-site active-active strategy on the right is for customers who can't afford any downtime. This is the most expensive of all DR strategies, but ensures almost zero data loss for mission-critical workloads. AWS Elastic Disaster Recovery, or EDR, is a leading provider of data migration and disaster recovery solutions. It simplifies and reduces the cost of a cloud disaster recovery by offering a highly automated solution. AWS EDR continuously replicates your machines and includes the operating system, databases, applications, and files into a low-cost staging area in your target AWS account and preferred region. In the case of a disaster, you can instruct AWS EDR to automatically launch thousands of your machines in their fully provisioned state in minutes. EDR's orchestration engine automatically launches fully operational workloads in the target AWS region at the time of failover. The entire orchestration process typically takes minutes, depending on the general time it takes for the machines to boot. In terms of the costs, because you are only in a passive state, you only incur a fraction of the cost when compared to an active environment. The warm standby approach involves ensuring that there is a scaled down but fully functional copy of your production environment in another region. This approach essentially extends the pilot-light concept and decreases the time to recovery because a subset of your workload is always on in another region. This approach also allows you to more easily perform testing or implement continuous testing to increase confidence in your ability to recover from a disaster. The left is the primary data center with infrastructure that is active, and the right region is a recovery region that is passive before failover. Now, when a disaster event occurs, the standby environment on the right becomes active and scales up to recover from the disaster event and keeps your business going. The key differences between pilot light and warm standby: the pilot light cannot process requests without additional action taken first, whereas warm standby can handle traffic, though at reduced capacity levels immediately. The pilot light approach requires that you turn on the servers and scale up, whereas warm standby only requires you to scale up as everything is already deployed and running. You can run your workload simultaneously in multiple regions as part of a multi-site active-active strategy. With a multi-site active-active approach, users are able to access your workload in any of the regions which it is deployed. This approach is the most complex and costly approach to DR, but it can reduce your recovery time to near zero for most disasters with the correct implementation. With multi-site active-active, because the workload is running in more than one region, there is no such thing as a failover in this scenario. When the disaster event happens on the left side, the fully configured production servers on the right region take over and help the business run. So that's a lot of information to take in. So let's summarize. In this session, you learned about data governance and data protection strategies, covering backup and restore, ransomware recovery, and also disaster recovery. We were able to cover some of the AWS value-added features from S3, AWS Elastic Disaster Recovery, or EDR, and AWS backup services that aided in these data protection goals. And in closing off, build your data architecture on AWS storage so your data is always protected. Security is job one, and your data is backed up, replicated for resilience, and can be recovered from accidental deletion. Your data is available when and where needed, with the performance to access whenever your application needs, and use it anywhere you need to. Data is dynamically cost optimized with storage classes, intelligent tiering, and dedupe and compression, and that data is put to work to realize its full potential. Accelerate your cloud journey by checking out the featured courses to build your cloud skills on AWS, or visit the link to explore over 550 free digital training courses. And as you build your skills, consider preparing for one of our 11 AWS certifications. These industry-recognized certifications span foundational, professional, and specialty levels to validate AWS knowledge and skills, building your credibility and confidence. So please scan one or both of the QR codes on the screen to get started with your cloud skills training and certification today. And lastly, on behalf of June Park and myself, I would like to thank you for your time today in viewing this session. Please do take the time to complete the feedback form so we can better understand your requirements and let us know how we can improve the event experience for you. And in closing off, I'm Naeem Mulche. Thank you again for joining, and happy building with AWS.